up where we left off. What have we been talking about? Go for it. Yeah, the whale video and all the activities we've been doing, all the notes we've been doing, we're talking about evolution. And we're talking about the evidence for the process of biological evolution. So far, there are 3 big branches of proof. The first one that we talked about very closely relates to the whale video. That first big branch of evidence is what? The first big category of evidence is fossils. The fossil record. And when we looked at the whale video, what they were showing was a series of life forms that lead up to a modern form. That's the fossil record in a nutshell. What's the second big branch of proof? So we have structural evidence. Structural evidence. And actually, I guess I should replace the word proof here with evidence. Because in science, we don't prove a darn thing. Has anybody told you that? We prove nothing. We only disprove things. It's true. We never prove anything. We disprove stuff. If you think something is true, you go, well, if that was true, then this wouldn't happen. And you attempt to disprove it. And if you can't disprove it, then we say, yeah, it's pretty well supported. So we have structural evidence. And structural evidence includes 2 subcategories. What's the first subcategory? You don't have to have the word. You can describe it. Whale flippers and human arm and hand bones. Or what kind of structures? Structures with the same... No, that's the other one. Structures that have the same shape. They are homologous. Yeah. Homologous structures. And homologous structures are similar in shape in different species. Structures that are similar in shape but exist in different species. And these can be species that are not all that closely related, and sometimes they can be in species that are pretty closely related. And in the whale video, in Morphed, were there homologous structures between whales and other mammal species? Yeah. There are a bunch of homologous structures between whales and other mammal species, including hippopotamuses, including you and me, including dogs and cats, and raccoons and bats. All these mammal species have got the same basic arrangement of bones in their forelimbs. That's a homologous structure. Now, nobody really questions, okay, dolphins and whales, are they related? Well, yeah, duh. They're both, glossy, torpedo-shaped marine mammals. And they've got tons of homologous structures. They're actually very closely related, much more closely related than you and a whale, or a raccoon, or a cat. So we find homologous structures in species that are not the same, but that are related. What's the other evidence? Jade, you had this one. Vestigial. And I always spell it wrong, so I'll probably spell it wrong here too. Vestigial. Is that right? I always screw up the I's, so we'll go with it for now, but I usually have to spell check myself on that. Vestigial. What's a vestigial structure? What's a vestigial structure? Do you remember?
It's something that we have, but it's pretty much used.
Yeah, it's a structure that exists in a modern species but doesn't serve a purpose. And it's evidence of their evolutionary past. Exists in modern species no known purpose or function. We'll say function. Evidence of past, evolutionary past. So in the whale video, what I like about that whale video is it ties together a lot of stuff from fossil record, the first line of evidence, with structural evidence, because you're looking at homologous structures in fossils. And it shows a few vestigial structures. What was the vestigial structure that was shown in the video? Remember? Yeah.
Was it like the legs and the whales?
Yeah, there are actually like little sort of orphan leg bones way back in the body of a lot of modern whale species. They don't have flippers back there. Yet, if you look at a whale skeleton, a complete whale skeleton, there are still little bones that correspond to a pelvis, as though at one time their ancestors did have a pelvis with full legs. They were quadrupeds. They were four-legged mammals. Okay. Biologists group organisms by how related they are. How many of you already knew that? Okay. Some of you. 2 of you. Everybody else either refuses to comment or didn't know that. And we talked a little bit at one point, I think, about dogs. Who here has a dog? Who here has seen a dog? Who here has actually touched a dog? Austin, you have homework. You need to go find a dog. You can pet it, take it treats, I don't care. Just go see a dog. So dogs, around the house, sleeping at the foot of your bed, eating treats, stealing food, dog that you're all familiar with is Canis familiaris, the familiar dog. This is the genus. This is the species. And genus is always capitalized. Species is never capitalized. And when we're talking about a lot of organisms that are in the same genus, they're related. These are like cousins. So here's another Canis species for you. Canis Latrans. I bet some of you have seen Canis Latrans. Bet you have, bet you have. Latrans means the singing. This is the singing dog. It roams our woods and fields in the wild here in Ohio. Coyotes! Canis Latrans is the coyote. It's the singing dog. They exist in all 88 counties in Ohio. They didn't used to, but they do now. That's a relatively new thing. At one time, coyotes were a western species. They didn't exist in Ohio, but they do now. And we'll talk when we talk about population ecology. We'll talk a lot about coyotes because I like them. So, same genus, different species, fairly closely related. And if you looked, who here has seen a coyote? Up close or across a field. Okay, it's a fair chance that a lot of you would have seen them. Could you mistake them for a dog at first glance? Yeah. Years ago, my grandma was in her 80s living alone at the farm, and she called my dad one night and she said, "Raymond, there was a weird-looking German Shepherd on my back porch." It wasn't a German Shepherd. It was a coyote, and it had chased a rabbit onto the back porch and killed it back there. We found fur and bones later, but it showed up again, and my dad saw it, and he said, "Mom, that was not a German Shepherd. That was a coyote on your back porch." And sure enough, we lost a few barn cats, but oh well. You could mistake them for a dog at a first glance because they're pretty closely related. So I'll give you one more Canis. Canis lupus. What is it? It's a wolf. It's a wolf. Different species than the coyote. Different species than the dog. Could you mistake a wolf for a coyote at a distance? It depends on how familiar you were with both species. Could somebody who has very little experience with wildlife see an animal and go, oh my gosh, I think it was a wolf, and it would actually be a coyote? Yeah, sure, my mom could do it in a heartbeat. Limited familiarity with wildlife. Could you see a wolf and at a distance mistake it for a dog? Yeah, again. And there are wolf-dog hybrids. You probably wouldn't mistake it for a poodle, but you might mistake it for a husky or a German shepherd or some kind of really large, pointy dog. Who here has seen a wolf? And this would be less common. Have you seen wolves in captivity, like at zoos? We don't have wolves in the wild in Ohio. We did at one time. Prior to statehood, prior to European contact, prior to basically the displacement and flat-out killing of a lot of Ohio wildlife, we did have wolves in the wild here. If you could be transported to this spot 500 years ago, there'd be wolves. We killed them all. That's literally what happened. Shot every single one of them in the state of Ohio. Look up the Hinckley Massacre sometime. So, again, same species, 3 different genuses. Related, but with notable differences. These are classified based on structural evidence, mostly. Now, up until recently, they were all classified based on structural evidence. What you're going to do today is a virtual lab, and it'll probably take us 2 days to finish. You're going to look at some lizard species. Does anybody here have lizards at home? What kind do you have?
I have no idea.
Okay, it's just a random lizard from a pet store. I think I should get some lizards to live in this room. What do you think? They could eat the moths that are breeding in the ferns. There are places. Who here has ever lived someplace where there were wild lizards that were abundant? Anybody lived in Florida? Every now and then we get somebody who's lived in Florida. Okay. There are parts of the country where there are lizards all over the place. And you see lizards like we might see a big bug. A friend of mine lived in Oregon, and there were these adorable little tiny lizards that would run through their house. And if you tried to pick them up by their tail fell off. It really freaked me out the first time it happened to me. So there are parts of the world where there are tons of lizards. And Puerto Rico and the Caribbean are one of them. So what you're going to do is a virtual lab. I'd like you all to go to Classroom at this point.